Hi, beautiful souls. This is Sadhana. Welcome to my channel. I'm really looking forward to this video as this is not scripted and I don't know what exactly is going to arise. But since I did the unboxing video of the Divine Muses Oracle by Maree Bento, I had in the back of my mind of doing a side-by-side with Victoria Moseley's Vintage Wisdom Oracle because some of the cards brought back images from Victoria's deck. And so I thought that I would go through both decks and try to pair up the cards so that we could have a conversation about each of the cards. They're both extremely beautiful, emotional, thought-provoking decks, and just seeing them side by side, if you have one or neither, I thought would be a really kind of helpful thing to do. So let's begin. I'm not going to read too much from either of the guidebooks, as I think the keywords underneath the pictures for the most part really kind of tell the story, but I will, if there's something that comes up, I will kind of share with you what it is that, or what kind of emotion is evoked for me in these cards. I really feel the love and the caring in both of these decks, and tremendous amount of thoughtfulness went into the guidebooks and the preparation of both the decks. And if you haven't seen my other video, Maree's guidebook is so, oh my goodness, I don't know how to say. It's thorough and it's thick and it's just full of beautiful information, and it's just so worth the price of these cards to add them to your collection. But let's go ahead. And so this is one of my favorite cards in Victoria's deck, Kindred Spirits. I just love the smiles and the chatter between these two geisha. You know, in the Japanese culture, you don't see a lot of smiling and giggling. And if you do, there's often a hand covering the mouth. And so this is a really beautiful expression to see these two women who I'm assuming it would be a private situation, right? And so they're just feeling so very, very connected. And in Maree's deck, we have the exact same keyword with this, again, lovely connection between both animal and human. And so we've got the two women, we've got the cat on the shoulder of the person in the foreground, and we have this, connection of the dog as well too. So just so much could be evoked in this card with surrounding other cards, right? I just think it has so much potential. I try not to spend that much time on each card, otherwise we'll be here all day. Again, we have the exact same keyword, and I believe in Victoria's deck there may be a couple of cards in both the decks actually that kind of speak to reflection, but because the keywords matched, I put these two side by side. And we have that in quite a few tarot decks where you'll see a person looking into a mirror or looking into a pond, and then what is reflected back is something that's quite different than the image you see on the other side of the pond, the water, or the mirror. And so that's a really powerful thought and connection, and also having the eye at the top of the card here is really well done. And then in Victoria's deck, it's really pensive, and we have the mirror in the background. So the mirror is a beautiful metaphor. It's really a great way to kind of tap into a heartfelt connection, a more honest connection. And sometimes, of course, that mirror is very, very challenging. I love the ancestor cards in both of these decks. I do use Victoria's deck when I'm doing past life readings. So I do past life readings with the intention of helping people to find patterns from past lives that are still repeating and still need work and intention. And I have every intention of using Maree's deck as well too, in that kind of way. It's a really beautiful, I think it would be a great path working deck. You'll see just the way she's designed these cards. And so here we have Sanctuary on the left and Retreat on the right. And the thing I want to say about these cards is that sometimes we need to create a protective border around us. Sometimes we need to go to the ashram. Sometimes we need to go away on a retreat to just have that physical protection around us so that whatever is going on has space to evolve. And so thinking of the word sanctuary, it doesn't have to be as complex as going, on a journey away to an ashram or to a retreat for weeks or months. The idea with sanctuary is to have that space, to have that corner in your home where you can go and you land there and it just feels like, you can just really be. And I think, this time of year, to have that space is really, really important. It might be inside your home either. It could very well be somewhere outside your home. And here we have Muse of Art and Expression. Beautiful cards, very kind of similar. We have the butterfly on both cards. The idea of water too is really kind of, though I like the way she's kind of hidden behind the veil, perhaps, or the water. And the idea here with the word expression for me is the whole idea with truth, but there's this connection also to creativity and allowing, exploring your potential through whatever modality of expression you choose. Just absolutely stunning cards. Here we have Power and Lionheart. And so we have the wildcats on the foreground of this card as well too. And I just really feel in both of these cards, there's that sense of, it's like the strength card. There's this balance and this internal strength that is reflected on the outside. And what is on the outside is extremely beautiful, right? It's a tremendous balance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine energy. And here we have union and celestial union. And this is a whole deep conversation in itself, but that very similar to what I said in the previous card, but this is a connection with spirit, a deep connection with spirit that brings peace and ultimately balance. And so the word yoga means union. That means yoking, bringing the two parts together. So that connection between the divine feminine, which is represented by all that is manifest, and then that celestial connection from the universal consciousness. And in yoga, that would be the Shiva consciousness. And we have so many symbols that you can work with on this card. Yeah. All right. Innocence and magical child. So kind of different idea with the keywords, but the thing that kind of comes for me in both of these cards is the idea of the reminder that children are so much closer to God than us adults are, because they haven't been alive on this planet as long. And so to put more trust into children and to lean into their spirit and their unknowing wisdom and beauty is just so very, very important. Sometimes I think we forget, right? We think that children are not wise, but there is a really beautiful, magical connection with children. Okay, so you can probably see why I put these two cards together. So we have choice and boundaries. And I love the way in Victoria's cards we have a beautiful, in the foreground it's kind of dry and barren, and then in the background we have flowers, more flowers. There's actually some here as well too. But the possibilities lie beyond that door. And so this woman has a choice to stay or to move on, or probably a multitude of other choices. And then the reason I put boundaries there, the moon might also speak to you as well too, because that's a huge symbol. But I like the way it's drawn with a brick wall and the moon energy is kind of breaking through the brick wall. So just begin. There's just so many ways you could enter into this card. And sometimes boundaries are more like barriers, the brick walls that we need to break down. And sometimes, like I was talking about the ashram, we need to create boundaries. And so that fine line between creating and breaking them down is always, it's a process, right? It's something we're always working with. Yeah. Look at these two, right? So doesn't this speak to like the High Priestess kind of card? Lunar energy, water energy. Just love the decorations and the symbols. And so the key word on the card is mystic rapture. I can just wrap my mouth around those words. So beautiful. What I thought I would do at the end of just going through these cards, I brought the beautiful Rebellion to the table here. So I'm going to do some kind of a spread for you with both of these decks and the beautiful Rebellion. Healing and Wounded Healer. So quite different energy with these two cards, but it was not a perfect fit to match the decks. And there's something about the different colored corks in the bottles on the left. And you notice the butterfly is on the right shoulder. Just so many different things you could pick up on. And the whole energy and the mythology behind the Wounded Healer too. That is such a powerful and almost this would fit really well into a past life reading, of course. I will share with you at least one of the cards. I'll read you a description from both of the books. And then we have Nature and Green Goddess. Gorgeous. And I think women of a certain age, or women who have been through some really, that those challenging times, can really understand the potency of these cards. Grace and Great Mother. This is a word that I have played with a lot over the last 7-8 years. And for me, grace is that divine connection for sure. And there's to understand that beauty and elegance is divine. Grace is divine. And sometimes we forget that beauty is God. And a card like this is just so very, very powerful. And then I paired that with Great Mother, which is an energy I think we would all benefit from leaning into a little bit more. Muse of dance and celebration. So there really is in both of these cards that element of heart-body connection. And I love the playfulness in the expression of the Muse of dance. So what I was going for here was the importance of staying in pain. if you are going through a difficult time, if you're going through something that is really challenging, both of these cards to me speak to staying in it and being in it and making sure that you're processing it rather than, brushing it under the carpet, rushing through it. There's a real, transitions we think of as fleeting, but if we can be in our transitions for enough time to process what we have learned or what we're learning, then I think we come out the other side so much better. I love these faces. Almost looks like it could be the same woman. Muse of eloquence and thought. And I thought the picture on the left really reflected the keywords of the card on the right. These are kind of big cards. Big cards. Right? On the right, we have the power of the group mind. And, what happens if we get in that group mentality and forget our individual strength and our individual perception? Discernment is about always, always seeing the big picture and not getting caught up in the drama or the passion, right? Always being able to kind of, step back. And so I thought this was a really cool pairing of cards. Wouldn't it be funny if we got one of these pairings in the reading later? Muse of hymns and faith. And hymns being, to me, devotional music of any faith. Shadow Queen and perception. And of course the mask here, right? Reflecting the shadow, but also the, we all move through a lot of different archetypes in any given lifetime. But I think it's the masks that we're fully aware of, that we wear, that really cause the most harm. We need to be in shadow. We need to experience our shadow so we can understand our light. But anyway, these are all really big things to talk about. Queen of Roses and love. Compassion, right? Self-love. Unconditional love. I think that is one of the keywords here. And this card on the right, Keeper of Time, is really interesting. You've heard me say many times, time is an illusion. Time is a man-made construct, but it still plays such an important part in everything that we do on a daily basis. And so keeping all of that in perspective is really important, and not being too, I know it's really hard, and like for me right now, the things that I'm going through, it's hard to be patient and to really reflect just on the concept of time from time to time is really important. But it's kind of cool how they both included a time card in there. So here we have the Alpha and Omega, totality and infinity, the Ouroboros. And so look at her tutu, the shape of her tutu. So I think that speaks really loudly to me. These cards don't match, of course, exactly. It's kind of a different energy, but I just thought they were neat to pair together. So when I'm looking at an oracle card, I'm looking at, like sometimes it's more of a blurred vision rather than in full focus. Card on the right's a little bit dark, hard to see. So we have Sacred Witch and Wisdom. And that connection to the earth, the experience of the practice of witchcraft, the practice of all of the practices that connect us to the divine are developed over time. And so in both of these cards, I see experience as really important, but also the word trust. I don't think either of these decks have a card that says trust. And so for me, wisdom is about that trust that has evolved through experience. And lots of different symbols you can work with on the deck on the right. Oh, there's a trust card. Trust and cosmic prince. Depending on what your background is, of course, the peacock has lots of metaphors to work with. And let's just go to the guidebook, and I'll just share with you one paragraph here. The Cosmic Prince Oracle card reflects an intermediate stage of the great work. With this phase, one begins to form a definite picture of inner truth. We begin to see the answers to the existential problems that came with us on our dark night of the soul. This card signals that any confusion you may have had is fading. There is new information coming to light that will guide you in the right direction. Maintaining a spiritual practice is key right now to raising your frequency with the universe. If your inquiry is not a spiritual nature, this card is marking the halfway point of a project or intention. And that is just one paragraph of 3 full pages of description. Awakening and psychic portal. I feel so much with these cards. They just are so evocative. Change and Sin Eater. So Sin Eater is a card that I had to look at and read a couple of times in the guidebook. It's just not a concept I'm familiar with, but if I read it intuitively, one of the things that comes up for me has to do with judgment and the fact that in order for there to be sin, there has to have had to be judgment. And judgment cannot come from the human construct. Judgment only comes, I think this whole conversation of sin and judgment is really important. So depending on where that card came up in a reading, it would really need to take some time to unpack what that is really about. And what is the function of the Sin Eater? And then we have a beautiful another card of transition actually, on the left. And look at the portal. We did have a shadow self card, I think, already. And these two, again, I kind of paired with, because we have that lunar energy, Sea Priestess and Shadow Self. In this deck, we have Solar Feminine and Lunar Masculine, which is really cool. And I think in Victoria's deck, the whole idea of an adventure is that. So to me, this is definitely solar feminine. So what that means is that the feminine energy is being charged and feeling strong and powerful. I think these two key words are really interesting to contemplate together. Enchantment and Muse of Astrology. Might be something in those pansies as well too. And then here we've got both of these women playing music. And so music may be necessary medicine, right? Depending on what your question was and how the reading went. And harmony has so many different layers of meaning. For sure, there are cards that kind of have very similar meaning and repeat the meaning, but the layers are subtle and it will also depend on surrounding cards. Here we have Eternal Student. So this card reflects both the student and the teacher. And it's a really important archetype to explore for certain people. And truth. So truth versus intellectual knowledge, truth versus wisdom, truth versus, and here we have an I as opposed to, the focus on the throat. Yeah, where are you going to go with any of these cards? So many things. Totem of air and gratitude. Air is the element of the heart. Gratitude is one of the greatest medicines of the heart space. Interesting. Mm-hmm. World Weaver. I find spiderweb cards really powerful. Recognizing all those connections, the connections that we aren't even aware of, sometimes just to really sit and think and project forward to all the possible scenarios that could have been affected by one of our actions. I think it's a really important exercise to do from time to time. And here we have another strength card. And there tends to be a real sense of freedom in this strength card. And I'm not suggesting that there is a connection here at all. We also have the word star up at the top, above the woman's head on the card on the left. And her being strong in her. Ooh, look at this connection here. Think about the strength of the web. The resilience of the web. I put these pairs together several days ago, so it's not fresh in my mind why I put some of them together. Freedom and spirit of home. Are there lots of quotes and expressions about home is where you are? And, sometimes we go step out into the world seeking freedom, and then we realize that, we're kind of taking home with us. What is freedom? What does freedom mean to you? Dreams and Totem of Water. So lots of watery cards in this deck. And then the figure in the left is also in water. Again, they could be the same person. Of course, with lighter hair and darker hair, but it's kind of cool, huh? Gentleness and Muse of Poetry. Muse of Comedy and Release. And I think this card has a whole array of directions you can go. Comedy as release, but also comedy as a mask, right? Which is on the card there, right? So comedy as covering up for insecurities, that sort of thing. There are not a lot of cards of letting go in either of these decks, and I think that is just a really important card to include in a deck that you have, that you're really working on healing and moving through your stuff. And it's kind of cool that her clothes are falling off. She's releasing her clothes as well. So here's the other card I was talking about, Lunar Masculine. So we have a very gentle, more effeminate looking boy with the lunar energy behind. It's just gorgeous. And then I paired that with purity. And you can kind of feel that, right? You kind of feel that connection between these two cards. So beautiful. Here's another card of release, of letting go, but also a card of just being. For me, surrender is not so much letting go, but just allowing whatever needs to arise to arise. And being okay with that which we don't know, which we don't understand. Guardian angel and totem of earth. Beautiful earth scenes in both of these cards. And I think as we get to the bottom, the similarity between the two cards is going to get further and further apart, but I did my best to match these up. Muse of history and patience. What I was thinking of here was it's really, really important that we learn from history, and humans are so bad at that. And often it's because we are so darn impatient and we are so ego driven. Yeah. And then we have this child in the card on the left. And that the whole idea of patience and learning that as a child, right? That it's a never ending skill that we continually have to be working on. Centering and lattice of the soul. In Maree Bento's guidebook, it's just a beautiful description of this card. Before I actually read her description, what I was getting from the lattice of the soul was I was actually looking at the bones and the structure being the foundation, the actual physical structure that holds the body, the skin, the meat suit, and as the container for the soul. And in order for that all to work together, we need to be grounded and balanced. And that's why I put those two cards side by side. But her guidebook explores a whole other layer and other level to that card. And if it does come up in the reading, I will share it with you. Peace and resonance. Super powerful word, resonance. And so continuing to explore frequency, however you do in your practice, through sound, through essential oils, through, I think, really keeping the word frequency as part of your daily practice. What is the frequency of this situation? What is the frequency of this disagreement? What is the frequency of, resonance is a really, really important word. And eventually the frequencies will match and we will find peace, which is what we have in both of those cards. Protection and ultima materia. These cards are quite different in meaning. Hope and astral ascent. I love the expression. I feel like I know this child. But look at their two faces. Very similar expression on their faces. And then totem of fire and new beginnings. Totem of fire to me kind of speaks to like an Ace of Wands energy and that opportunity to step forward and to take action in a new way, in a new path. Couple more cards to go. If you're still with me, I hope you've enjoyed just kind of walking through these two decks and kind of seeing where and how you might use them and their potential. beauty and wild man. And you see how they're both, like, she's just covered with flowers and he's covered with greenery. There was something about putting these two together that made me feel like they needed to meet each other. Right? That green man energy with beauty. And remember what I said earlier about beauty. Abundance in Sky Father. And when I think of the sun and the blessings of the sun, I always think of abundance rather than, all of the negative aspects of too much sun. But that's why they're facing each other. But she's looking away from the sun. Victoria's deck has quite a few cards you can use for facings, which is kind of cool. And this is a really interesting card, Perfect Stranger. And I paired that with compassion. So just give that a moment of thought. And compassion, like gratitude, is amazing medicine for the heart, for grief, for all of the challenging experiences of the heart. And then the very last card is Raven King. And for those of you that are lovers of ravens and crows and all of the magic that this animal possesses, you'll understand the potency of this card here. So I'm going to shuffle both of these decks as well as shuffle the Beautiful Rebellion Tarot. And then I'm going to create a spread and I'll be back in a second with the reading. All right, so I shuffled and cut both of these decks. And I'll just give the Beautiful Rebellion one more shuffle here. So I didn't really come up with a question, but it's mid-December. It's depending on what's going on with you and your family and your situation at home. This feels like a reading of comfort, of love, almost like a reading of protection. And so I want to ask about that and about how I can seek solace and protection and comfort during this time. Okay, so I'm going to do 4 cards and just kind of weave a story together for you. Wow. This is not going to be an easy reading, and there's a bit of a glare, so I'll hold the cards up for you. So we have 2 of Pentacles, 10 of Swords, 3 of Swords, and the Hanged Man. Gratitude. And Muse of Poetry. Okay. So this really kind of speaks to, if this season is a really challenging time for you, to be okay with that and to be in the pain and your experience of the difficulties of this season. Okay? So I'm just going to lead with that because we have 3 of Swords. And 3 of Swords speaks to heartache. It speaks to difficult challenges. And in the Suit of Swords, we're dealing with the element of air, which has to do with the heart and processing all of the emotions in the heart. And then across the other side, we have the 10 of Swords. So while this is still very much, and I'm kind of seeing that this is kind of this is a fundamental, foundational issue that is still very much a part of you. It's still very much a part of who you are. It's still very much a part of your experience. And there is like this this need for you to find the beauty in being with whatever it is that all of that is bringing up. And whether that comes through reading poetry, listening to sacred music, right, which tends to be a kind of a poetry there, or writing poetry in your journal. Like I could almost see that instead of fast tracking your way through all of the events that are coming up during the holiday season, it's like this is really important for you. And this follows through very much with a couple of readings I did earlier today, really taking care of you, yourself, your emotions, your feelings. And if this is resonating with you, perhaps this would be a time to start a new journal. Remember I talked earlier about the medicine for the heart space being gratitude? And this can very easily be woven in here, because if we can find one thing that we feel grateful for, or saying that in another way, looking for the gold, looking for the medicine, looking for the teachings and the healings of the experiences that were for you the 3 and the 10 of swords. So yes, be in your pain, be in your sorrow, be in your sadness, but also find the gold, find the teachings, and be with that. Does that make sense? And this whole experience is one that's going to turn things upside down. It's one that's going to cause a new perception, new kind of a new reflective energy for you. And so this is all going to take a little bit of time for you, and you need to be with this. And if you are really busy right now, you're going to need to really carve out some time to be here and to be in the energy of this. So this Hanged Man is a really cool card. I love that he's kind of away from the rest of the people, and you can see here she's kind of curious about what he's doing, hanging out inside this cement. I forget the whole description of the painting. Oh, this guidebook. So the guidebook for this deck is so beautiful. She describes each of the paintings. And of course, we don't see the whole painting in a lot of these cards. We only see a portion of it. And so in the guidebook, she describes the whole painting. But you can see that he's chosen to be in that space, away from society, so to speak, away from the culture, away from those women, so he can process whatever it is that he needs to process. And then the 2 of Pentacles here, which is the one that's a bit in the glare. Okay, of course, that speaks to balance and finding your, I love how that they're barefoot and that they're in the grass. And depending on where you live this time of year, barefoot in the grass is not necessarily an option, nor is collecting wildflowers. But seeking out your balance through your food, the ways, the different types of things that you read or watch, the different activities that you're doing, like really intentionally bringing in balance for the purpose of, healing and moving through these 2 really difficult, the energies of these 2 difficult cards here. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this also is kind of a segue into what I want to talk about tomorrow night on my live. So if you're watching this sequentially, this is a really nice way to kind of move forward to my live tomorrow night. So thank you very much for being here today, and I look forward to your comments and questions about all 3 of these decks. Stay well, my friends. Namaste.